Okay, so in this panel, we're going to look at the live music industry and scene in the UK. And what we also want to do in the panel is kind of look at the opportunities for Indian artists to kind of break the UK market. And joining me is a really good representation of the live music scene in the UK. I'm going to hand you over now to the panelists and let them introduce themselves. So starting with Martin.
Hello. Oh, it's working. Great. Hi, I'm Martin Elborn. I've been one of the main bookers at the Glastonbury Festival, which is the biggest festival in Europe for about the last 30 years. I work at about 6 or 7 other festivals. Co-founded WOMAD. When I'm drunk, I claim I invented the term world music. And with Stephen, I'm part of NH7 as well, this weekend in Pune. And I also co-founded Great Escape, which the very lovely Natasha Haddad, who only arrived today, by the way, about 2 hours ago, cost her 500 quid for a visa. So she's a real trooper, so please get over for the wonderful Natasha Haddad.
Hi there, that's me, Natasha Haddad. So I book the festival called The Great Escape, which is an international showcase festival over in Brighton in the UK. As Martin said, he co-founded it with John McEldowie, who's one of the directors on the festival. The purpose of the festival is it's a showcase festival for international artists to come over and get new business from all over the world, and also for us to export UK artists to all over the world as well. Alongside that, we run a conference which focuses on new media and publishing and labels and the whole lot, live music internationally.
Great. I'm Stephen Budd. I, for many years, have managed record producers and songwriters and worked on the recording side of the British music industry. I also started a management company called Supervision Management, which now represents a lot of well-known British indie artists. And together with Martin and Vijay Nair, we started the NH7 Weekender, which you'll be coming to, some of you, I hope, in Pune this weekend.
Hi, my name's John Slade. I run a booking agency called Elastic Artists. We're based in London, but we've just recently opened an office in the northwest in Liverpool, and we have an agent working for our company from Paris in France. We have 9 booking agents, and we look after about 300 live bands and DJs. Mostly, about half of our artists are from the UK, and then of the remaining 50%, about half of those are from America, and the rest are from Europe and Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and we have a couple of artists from South America. So that's me.
Tom Baker. I promote a whole variety of different artists under the name Eat Your Own Ears in London and the UK, and run 3 festivals, one sort of very eclectic mix of music from indie to pop to folk. Another one is called the Underage Festivals, focuses 13 to 17-year-olds. It's quite a unique audience. And then Apple Cart, which is a brand new festival, started this year, which is more of a family-based focus festival.
Great, okay. So in the UK at the moment, we have over 500 festivals occurring each year. But one of the longest standing festivals is the Glastonbury Festival, which is 40 years old now. And I was wondering whether Martin could give us a bit of a kind of overview of what Glastonbury is, but also to talk about some of the challenges it's faced over the years and how it's kind of maintained its reputation for such a long time.
Right, okay, that's quite a big question. Just to put it in context, it's interesting that most of us are involved in live music here, because in the UK and in Europe as well, now, because live music, live performances, is now the largest sector of the music industry, with obviously recorded music is getting smaller and smaller. And the festival scene is actually a very important part of the live music thing. And in fact, the European Summer Festival circuit is both a huge revenue stream, but also is one of the best ways of breaking new acts. So, and it's incredibly important culturally as well. You'll find virtually nobody from the UK in particular who doesn't go. This is from the ages of like 5 years old to 60, who doesn't go to at least one festival, and often people go to 10 or more. And these are expensive. I mean, Glastonbury is nearly £200. You know, there's 140,000 people camp for 5 days, often in very muddy fields. It's extremely well known in the UK. The BBC both broadcast it, TV. There's like about 60 hours live coverage on TV, tens of hours of coverage on the radio as well.
I think it's worth saying again, that's 140,000 people go to Glastonbury.
Yeah, so when it's on, in the area, the county it's in, it becomes the biggest city temporarily. So it's a massive logistical thing to put on, and I could go on for hours about it. But
Okay. Well, if we kind of put it out to the whole panel and just pose the question, why has Britain managed to have such a thriving festival scene? What are the conditions that make that possible in the UK?
I think people are sort of inspired by other festivals. I mean, a lot of people use, Glastonbury as a benchmark of what a great festival is. I mean, Glastonbury is not just about music. It has a amazing music lineup, but it's about the whole experience and what you get from that 5 days or 3 days of being there. It's about music, but all the whole cultural sort of excitement that goes into Glastonbury. And running Field Day, you sort of go to lots of different festivals throughout Europe and sort of pick and choose elements of those festivals that you want to sort of bring to your own event. And I think a lot of festival promoters, Bestival is greatly inspired by Glastonbury. End of the Road, a new festival, is inspired by the Green Man Festival. Great Escape's probably be inspired by South by Southwest. So it's sort of a chain reaction, I think, and people sort of jump on a bandwagon and sort of run with it. And
yeah, I was going to add that I think as a booking agent, one of the things that we have to do is discover new bands. And the great thing about festivals, I think, is that, if it takes maybe 10 well-known international bands to sell the vast majority of the tickets, there's still maybe, I don't know, in a typical festival, another 40 or 50 slots that you've got available for bands that might not be so well-known. So both from the point of view of the customer, the audience, and also the promoter, and certainly from people like me that are in the business of discovering new bands, it's a great opportunity to have loads of people that are into music as your captive audience, if you like, in the same place at the same time, who are very interested in finding new music and are very open-minded and are effectively kind of caught in the glare of new music. So I think it's a fantastic way to expose new talent and to develop new genres of music.
I think that people want to go because it's such an expression of free spirit to be able to go to a festival as well and be able to do things that you would not do in your normal everyday life. It's a very, very social event, so people get used to seeing their friends at various different festivals across the summer. It's also, people go because it's a way of having a holiday, a short little holiday break, and I think that now that there's a recession effectively in Europe, with people having less money to spend on foreign holidays, you're finding more people actually going to festival events and staying in the UK, and to go to a festival is effectively a mini holiday. And these are just some of the reasons why over the last 20 years festivals have exploded in the UK. It could be said we now have an oversupply of festivals, and in the last summer, some of the smaller festivals that don't have enough paying customers to come have actually closed. But nevertheless, it's still an extremely thriving and healthy scene in Britain.
I also think that it's due to the social way of sharing music, and I think festivals aren't so much, you have a rock festival and an indie festival. Festivals are gradually, they're sort of taking in a whole variety of different genres of music, because I think people's way of absorbing music is much bigger and more open, and I think that's also influenced, the way more festivals are springing up, because there's more, people are sort of listening to more music, so you can diversify in your booking policies. And I think that is an issue where festivals start off with one, genre of music, and then they gradually start broadening that, and they start crossing into territories that another festival was doing, and then the competition, and that's what I find with the festival I book. There's other festivals, copying me, and I'm copying other festivals.
But that
and
just follows suit with commercial music. Eventually, more underground music goes into the public eye and ear through licensing and syncing and the charts and cool new DJs playing it on the radio. So eventually that underground kind of music is going to be played at more commercial style festivals. And that's great for the band. It's progression as well.
Oh yeah, totally. But I'm just saying, in terms of the inspiration of festivals and the booking policy, it's more open. It's more an open playing field. You know, you can book a dance DJ, you can book a folk musician, and you can book a rock act all on the same bill. Whereas, you know, I don't know, when Glastonbury started, it probably was about that, but that's because it's a very unique, special event. But
when it started, it was 2,000 hippies and, one stage. It's now 30, 40 stages. I was going to add two things. One is that as a sort of, I said that the UK festival market is very mature now and covers like every genre of music you could possibly think of and all at different times. I mean, Great Escape is 30 indoor venues, for example, so there's a growing winter market now. There's also a massive tourism market. Lots of British people, UK people, go to Eastern Europe now to festivals, A, because they're cheaper, but also with NH7, for example, I mean, maybe not, I mean, this is only the second year of it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if in 2 years' time that we have 3,000 or 4,000 Brits coming to that festival, you know, that it becomes a mainstay of the backpacker circuit. So, it is a worldwide phenomenon now, the festival market. And I know we shouldn't talk exclusively about NH7, but clearly that is going to be part of the future of India's music industry. But the other point I'll make is on the business side of things, is that why festivals can be... I mean, I speak as someone who lost the most amount of money ever back in 1982. For about 17 years, I held the record. But if you get a festival right, you actually make a lot more money than regular shows. It's very, very... I mean, the UK is an extremely competitive live music market, probably the most competitive in the world. And it's actually very hard, it's very tough making money just on regular shows because of the guarantees you have to pay and because you're paying 90% of the... Well, you know, Natasha knows more about it than me. So with a festival, you're not paying percentages. So if you get it right, there's a lot more money you can make, and of course you have a lot more. And every person I know who's a successful promoter has a festival now, and they love their festival, but because they also they have much more creative input into it.
Natasha, I just wanted to talk a little bit about The Great Escape. Can you explain what the festival is? It's obviously different to the kind of normal festivals in the UK as it's more industry-facing. How do you identify the talent for your festival, and how can Indian artists approach you to play?
Sure. Well, basically, as we mentioned earlier, it's a 3-day festival and it's across loads of different venues in Brighton. Like Tom mentioned earlier, it's very similar to South by Southwest, if you know that festival. We use 30 venues in Brighton, and we have over 300 acts of all different kinds of nationalities and musical styles playing the event. The submission process is we've got a simple online submission, which is free for anyone all across the world to use, and then we basically grade every single artist that submits. We also take agency submissions, and we build up contacts internationally, be it promoters or other festivals or agents or labels or just key industry people in various different countries all around the world, and we get tips from them. So a lot of our international booking is done through word of mouth as well. So I would recommend that if you are applying to play for a showcase festival like The Great Escape, you speak to as many people as you know on your territory and also in the territory that you're applying to play, and go through word of mouth as well as submission process.
Of course, Raghu Dixit came and played The Great Escape, which gave them quite a bit of visibility in the UK. It also has a conference attached to it, The Great Escape. So there's a 3-day conference and there's 3 days of concerts, both happening at the same time. The conference is more aimed towards, obviously, business people, so music business delegates, but the live music element is open to the public as well, and people buy one wristband, which allows them to move between from venue to venue to venue. So it's quite an innovative approach and a way for the audience to get to see a lot of new music in a very short space of time.
The key objective with the festival really is for artists and industry delegates to create new business at the event. So a successful event for us is if your artist comes over and plays the event and gets new business out of it, whether that be picking up a UK agent or picking up a sync deal in the States or a publishing deal. Yeah.
Or for international festival bookers to see them play
Yeah.
and get them booked onto festivals around Europe.
We invest a lot of money flying over international festival bookers with the hope that they take artists away from the Great Escape and put them to play on their festivals.
Great. John, can we talk to you a little bit about how Indian artists might approach you as a booking agent in the UK?
Okay, so I was listening to the previous panel talking about what it takes to get successful in your own country, and I guess the same rules apply even if you're what would be an international act wanting to perform in the UK. I think in the old days, there was a sequence that you had to follow about getting a manager first, and then a record company, and then you might find an agent, and then you'd get some shows and build your fan base that way. I think in the digital age, a lot of those rules have been turned on their heads, and often it's actually a booking agent that would be one of the first people to get involved with a developing act. We've had some experience in our company of booking tours in India, so working with Indian promoters who are interested in developing European talent in India, and I've also worked with some, not acts from India, but acts like Talvin Singh, and we worked with Bobby Friction and Nihal when they first started over here. And obviously, there is a sensibility in the UK of people that are familiar with cultural trends, if you like, or cultural styles coming from India. And I think that wherever, I know there's a huge Indian diaspora around the world, and I think that, particularly in the bigger cities in the UK, there is clearly an audience for people to discover Indian talent. And I think we've already mentioned Raghu Dixit, who's achieved quite a lot of success. I think, as I would say to anybody, whether it be members of my own staff or artists that we're talking to, you really have to get the quality of your music right. I think a lot of people think that there's some mystery that you have to know people in the business and you have to have introductions. I think clearly those things become important, but in the main I would say that the first job is to make sure that your music is relevant and that it's got an audience in the UK. I think, if I think about acts that have been successful in India, in the UK from other parts of the world, including India, what I see to be happening is like a fusion of trends that are popular in our own countries, such as, like, for instance, with drum and bass, with electronic music, with people like Talvin Singh. They were fusing kind of traditional Indian themes with popular European styles of music. And I think that one of the ways in which I would expect an Indian artist to be successful in Europe is that if they've somehow found kind of a marriage or a hybrid of forms of music that are popular here and forms of music that are popular in the UK. In terms of how we would find an act or discover an act, I think often if an artist has had the opportunity to perform at an event like Great Escape, for instance, I can think of other festivals around the world like WOMAD in England, which books a lot of international artists. There's a festival in France called Transmusicale that has a long history of booking acts from all around the world. These are the types of situations where, as an agent, I might go to a festival like that and discover an artist for the first time. And really, the one talent that a booking agent needs to have is to look at 100 unknown acts and be able to decide for themselves, based on their gut instinct, which of those acts would be worth pursuing. But I think one of the good things about these types of events is, the NH7 Festival, for instance, is going to be an opportunity for a British act to come and perform in India. So, there's Basement Jaxx playing on the festival at the weekend. I can imagine if he was exposed to some Indian acts here that he thought were really amazing, he would be very happy to make something possible for them to come over and perform in the UK. So again, I guess having some sort of introduction or some recommendation is very important. But again, I doubt somebody like Felix from Basement Jaxx would be interested unless he saw somebody that he thought was really talented. So I guess, again, it comes back to the same old question, which is that the music has to be really right first.
Thanks. Stephen, you obviously deal with a lot of recording artists. What would be the approach for Indian artists to kind of break into the kind of recording industry in the UK? Is it different to the live approach?
Well, again, there's no blanket answer for that because different types of music require different types of approaches. But I mean, there are, if people are making innovative and different music, I think the barriers have broken down a lot that used to exist. There used to be, why would we be interested in something from India? Whereas I think that's completely different now. I think it's, they're from India. That might be really interesting. So there's much more open mental approach to receiving and looking at and quantifying new music. And it doesn't matter where it comes from as long as it's really good. I mean, there's great Indian dance music, there's good Indian metal music, there's good Indian, all sorts of Indian folk music that is blending itself with rock music too, so like you were talking about before. And it's those artists who are managing to find something that triggers and appeals to the British market that record companies would be interested in that. There are record companies who specifically deal with world music. It's a term that I like less and less, but it still nevertheless exists. Who would be interested in releasing Indian artists in the UK. And of course there's an enormous diaspora community in the UK, which would perhaps be open to the more traditional Indian artists. And that is a separate market altogether, really. What we're talking about here is how you can bring Indian artists and break them across the UK, the British market, which also includes the Indian population, but also just British people in general.
I think one of the things that Stephen just said there was really interesting about how to quantify somebody's success or their appeal. And as a booking agent, when MySpace launched about 5 years ago, it was amazing because, for the first time, obviously in the old days, people used to say, oh, so-and-so sold so many records. But often when you're dealing with unsigned bands, you don't know how many, they haven't sold any records. But one thing that they do have is they have a number of likes or plays on MySpace. And obviously now it's on Facebook and on SoundCloud now, you can quantify exactly how popular a particular act is, or you can see how much they're trying to mislead you about how successful or how popular they are, because you can actually see evidence of how many people are following them or how many fans they have. And I think, if I was an agent who was being approached by an act in India that was saying, oh, well, we've got a really good thing going on, one of the first things I would do would be to try to quantify that success. And clearly there are lots of tools online now through social media. Obviously artists can manage their own profile and talk to their own audiences in that way. And I think that's a really useful way of measuring somebody's appeal.
I totally agree, and I think that's very much the future of the industry throughout the world. You always come back saying that you've got to be really good, but once you got past that stage, if you are actually good, yes, of course you'll go to events like this, whatever, and hopefully the right person sees you. But you have to develop your own database, which mostly that means giving away your music for free in return for an email address. And I don't know if he's probably fallen asleep, but Joe from Music Glue's around at this conference, and so you should all try and meet him, because that's probably the most used company in the UK. And you need that database because you want to start selling tickets direct to your fans, T-shirts direct to your fans, whatever it is direct to your fans. Also, people like me, people like John, we want proof. It's no longer good enough to say. It means nothing saying I've got 1 million people who have listened to me on MySpace, because you can fake that. I want to know that a trusted company like Music Glue, doesn't have to be them, there are others. That there's real email addresses there, and you don't even think about coming to London unless you know that you've already got whatever. We're in early days yet, so but you want to know there's 1,000 people in the London area who have actually downloaded your music, who are likely to buy a ticket. And the promoter wants to know that. You know.
Well, I think one of the key things to do is, if you are looking at coming over to focus on another territory, be that the UK or anywhere, is before your trip over, if you have the opportunity to take that trip, is look into self-promotion in the territory before you come over. So if that's hiring a press agent to do some local press from you, or someone to seed out information to UK blogs, to get those likes up, to get fans in the territory that you're about to go over to before you go there, to get a buzz created online so that people want to come and see you when you're coming over and tell more people about you before you come over. I think that's, and obviously coming over with product as well to sell on.
I was going to move it on slightly to talk a little bit about NH7. I just wanted to talk about your guys' relationship with OML and how that came about, what inspired you to start a festival here in India, and some of the differences and challenges that you've noticed operating in the live Indian market.
Well, I first met Vijay Nair, who is our partner. Nair, thank you. Who is our partner here, when the British Council asked me to come and be a judge on the Creative Entrepreneur of the Year award about 4 years ago. And then we went out after that award. He won that award, and we went out afterwards, and we went to the Blue Frog here in Mumbai and saw some wonderful Indian bands play. And at that point, we started a discussion about, and these were indie music bands, something, I hadn't really realized that there was such an interest in indie type music, indie rock music in India. And Vijay was a great fan and supporter of this type of music. And we had started a conversation about, wouldn't it be great if we can bring some of the English indie groups to India? And that initiated a conversation. And then when Vijay came to the UK and met Martin as well, between the three of us, we came up with the idea of trying to put on a festival that showcased the best indie music from the UK and the best indie music from India, and get the two of them together. And there's been an enormous amount of interest in that from everybody. And of course, with I think there's a lot more openness to indie rock music now in India. People have access to YouTube and are watching new music coming through all the time. But wouldn't it be great if they got to see these artists live? And that's one of the key reasons why we decided to invest in and start up NH7.
I think there's been a sort of significant shift, because one of the side effects of the shift towards live music being the dominant revenue stream in the music industry is that people are getting much more interested in the sort of the non-traditional markets. Obviously, traditionally, you would just tour North America or Europe. So people really want to break out on that now to Europe. It'd be Western Europe. So, the clever bands, the clever management, the clever companies, they want to break into these new markets. And of course, every week there's an article about the rise of India in a British newspaper. So, apart from the cultural connections between our two countries, we don't pay the bands that much money from the UK bands to play in NH7. They all are really, really, really keen.
That's right. People want to come here. They want to come and experience India. They want to experience the culture, and this is a real opportunity for them to come over and participate.
And also, they know that although it's we all realise it's relatively early days, if you like, for the rise of non-Bollywood music in India. But it's clearly going to be a situation where bands will, whether it's a year's time or 2 years' time, be able to play like 15 dates in India. And that's actually incredibly important, because even if you're not making much money, as long as you're not losing money, because there's only so many times you can play your domestic country, you need to be on the road for sort of 8 months of the year, just, paying your crew, paying your whatever.
I think also as well, lots of really interesting projects come out of it for the UK artists that come to India and play. They do lots of collaborations and work on unique projects that they wouldn't necessarily.
Mumford and Sons.
And that gives them more kind of inspiration and more product as well to take back home to the UK. And I think hopefully the same would work vice versa with Indian artists going over to other cultures.
Yeah, we've had examples of artists from the UK, quite a lot of them, coming to Bollywood to work with Bollywood music producers, string arrangers particularly. You've got wonderful access to incredible musicians here. And so we very much, personally, and I think all of us together, want to encourage collaborations between British artists and Indian artists and Indian musicians working together.
And the festival's in its second year this year.
Yeah.
How's it kind of grown over the 2 years? Have you increased the capacity this time round?
Yeah, we've moved the site a couple of miles down the road from where it was last year. First event was fantastic. I don't know how many people from here came to it, but it was a wonderful, wonderful event. The organisation of it, which Vijay must take responsibility and credit for, was fabulous. Production, sound, lights, and the overall feel of the festival was great. and we're expecting to double the size of it this year. We've moved to a different site, as I say, down the road. It's from this Friday, and if you'd like to come along to the festival, you are welcome as mine and Martin's personal guests. So after this particular event, after this panel, if you come up to me or to Martin and say you'd like to come to the festival, we will put you on our personal guest list. This is our gift to you.
I wanted to talk a little bit...
Hopefully this year there won't be a busy road running between the two main stages. That's, if you want to say what's the biggest difference between
I was going
a
to talk about
European
differences,
festival and an Indian one, that was pretty weird. Trying to cross an Indian, particularly, if you're not used to Indian roads, crossing that road was a pretty strange experience as the evening wore on.
There's no road through the festival site this year.
John, I wanted to talk a little bit about cultural sensitivities. And what are your experiences of some bands that you're aware of playing India and some of the differences that have been encountered?
When we were discussing the panel, I mentioned that my company brought one of our alternative garage punk bands, who are an American band called the Black Lips. They played in India in 2009, and I think basically the whole tour got cancelled after the second performance because the musicians were in breach of certain obscenity and decency laws in India. And clearly there's an example of how certain bands may not necessarily be appropriate for an Indian audience in just the same way that certain Indian bands may not necessarily be well understood in other parts of the world. I think from an agent's point of view, we would always be very cautious about ensuring that an artist that we were going to be bringing to India was going to be well behaved and was going to represent both my company and themselves appropriately. I mean, I've worked also in China, and we've had a few bad experiences of having excessive amounts of censorship applied to certain artists performing by the government and the cultural ministries in China. So I think that one always has to consider certain cultural sensitivities around working internationally. And I think equally, for an Indian artist that's wanting to work abroad, I guess understanding the lie of the land in the country that they're wanting to work in is of crucial importance. And I think often, a lot of bands come over to a foreign country, say for instance somebody's discovered them for the first time and wants to bring them, and they maybe haven't really given too much thought to not just how they're going to make the show work, but also what the expectations of the audience are and what the prevailing cultural landscape looks like in that country.
Right, Tom, I wanted to talk a little bit now about funding festivals and how festivals kind of make their money. Can you explain from a UK perspective where the kind of revenue streams come from with a festival?
It's a mixture really of ticket income, and the ticket price is based upon the overall budget. And for Field Day, it's a one-day event in London, so we try and keep the ticket prices cheap as possible. And it's always a struggle, sort of making it sort of break even. So you obviously have other income streams. Sponsorship is one, but for the events I do, the Underage Festival is very much sponsorship driven, and then obviously the bar income, and then you've got other revenue streams from selling catering on site and also merch. But then it all depends on the type of event it is. Like Field Day is very much music driven festival, and people go purely for music for 12 hours, and people don't buy merch. But Underage, we sell all of the merch, because it's a younger audience, and that's what they want. And we'll sell everything from wristbands to T-shirts to pants. It goes right across the board. But so I think there's lots of different income streams, and I think the longer you run a festival, the more you sort of tap into different areas and understand how you can generate income to make the whole event work.
I think obviously the big difference between the UK and India in this is ticket income is much, much more relevant in the UK. Glastonbury, for example, which is a multi-million-pound event, 95% of the income is ticket income. That's partly because we don't have any official sponsorship. The other thing is, and obviously over here, ticket prices are way, even compared to local income differences, I'd say they're lower anyway. But also, people buy in advance in the UK. So Glastonbury famously goes on sale in, round about, we're actually not on next year because of the Olympic Games, but it normally go on sale now for the event in June. We sell 140,000 tickets in an hour. And we're not unusual in that. There's quite a few festivals that sell out straight away without announcing any bands.
Yeah, you could.
Whereas
I mean, if
with NH7, even actually VJ's really busy, man. But we don't actually know at the moment how many people are going to go to the event. Whereas if I was in the UK and my event was starting in 2 days' time, I could tell you within like 100 people how many people were going to go to it.
I mean, Glastonbury could actually sell 300,000 tickets if you had the capacity. That's how popular it is. But yes, here there's I understand that there's a very
this is not uncommon.
different culture of ticket buying. Yeah.
And I guess sponsorship is much more important here in terms of a revenue stream.
It's essential, yeah.
It's essential, yeah.
But it's becoming essential in most of Europe now as well. So
yeah. Natasha, just to talk about government funding, does the Great Escape receive any government funding or any grant funding towards its kind of revenue stream?
Yes, we do actually. We're invested in by UKTI, the Trade and Investment governing body in the UK. That money that we get from UKTI isn't money that's supposed to be spent on the festival. It's actually money to spend on flying over international delegates from all around the world and putting them up in hotels so that business is created, so that it's an investment to create trade at the event. So we have to account for that penny for penny, spend for spend, to ensure that it's going exactly on what it's supposed to go on. Like we can't use that money to fly over press so that we get coverage. It's not for the immediate benefit of the festival. It's for the benefit of the artists playing the festival, which obviously is a benefit for us if the artists get new business.
There's lots of events around the world that get an awful lot more government funding than we do. We're one of the smallest, partly because we're in southern England. So that's not seen as an economic priority, which is fair enough. One thing relevant for India is that the money we do get from the government, which, as Natasha said, is very specific. There's only very certain things we can spend it on. But one of the 4 countries in the world that we're allowed to spend it on is India. And the other thing is the British Council, which doesn't directly pay us money, normally does something to do with Great Escape, and they're particularly strong in India. Yeah.
It's for international arts, really, that funding that we get.
Okay, well, we're kind of coming towards an end for the panel, and I just wanted to open up to all of you guys to see if you've got any questions directly for any of the panelists. Okay.
Ask us about Britain.
Well, actually, there was one thing I would say, which is related to Raghu Dixit, really, because I think he did it this particularly well, which is whenever you have an artist that comes over from a country such as India or Australia, New Zealand, that has a large diaspora in the UK, there's always, on one level, it's great, because if you're organised, it means, say there's a lot of Australian bands who can come over to London, play to 2,000 people at £20 a ticket, cover their costs, but all they ever do is play to Australians who live in London. And so it doesn't develop their career. So obviously, exactly the same applies to Indians. So whilst it's great to have you, and obviously there's lots of Bollywood-based artists that can sell out arenas in the UK, but they never expand beyond that. And I think Raghu's, and then his UK manager is around somewhere, has been a great example of where he's covered actually 3 areas of the market. So he's covered, the indie market. He's played, the various Mellors that we have in the UK, of which there are quite a few now. He's also done more like rock, showcase events like the Great Escape, and done very well out of it. And he's also covered like the world music market, which is almost like a separate genre. And okay, he's had a few breaks, like getting on, the later with Jules Holland. But it's you have to sort of, obviously it depends on the genre of artist, but if you actually want to develop a real career in the UK, covering the whole of the market, you have to sort of think separately. And that's why if you are coming over to doing your show to London, and you know that it's going to be all Indians in the audience, try and find another event on that's likely to get more of an industry to it, because there's more and more of these sort of showcase. Apart from Great Escape, there's about 10 other similar but smaller events, but they're still worth, if they happen beyond in the week you're over in London, that are absolutely worth considering, because the people who run these showcase events absolutely love having bands from countries outside of the UK, and India is a very, very, literally is a hot country
Yeah.
in more ways than one.
And there are quite a few cultural organisations that have some cultural funding. I'm particularly thinking of organisations like the Barbican and the South Bank, who during the course of the year will have several Asian or Indian-themed events where they will be booking artists from India.
And they have lots of money.
But this acts as a launch pad of interest in those particular artists, and it's a very, very, if you're able to get the attention of those people and get them to book you, it's a great place to start for Indian artists. But then there's so many different types of Indian music. Indian DJs and Indian dance music producers would come in from a completely different angle and a different route. Festivals in the UK who specialise in dance music, I think, would be very interested in booking Indian DJs, bands like artists like the Medieval Pundits and those kind of artists are going to have a lot of interest in the UK.
Okay, well, we've got a few minutes left. I just wanted to finish up talking about the future of the live music industry in both the UK and in India, and kind of get the panelists' perspective on where things are going for both markets. There's talk in the UK of the festival market becoming saturated. As I said before, we have over 500 festivals happening in the UK at the moment, and a lot of people are kind of predicting a decline in the amount of festivals in the UK. Whereas maybe there's a different story here in India with the kind of explosion of alternative music. So just kind of open out to all of the panel just to get their perspectives on what they think are going to happen in both markets. Maybe starting with you, Tom.
I think that festivals, they're much stricter with their exclusivity clauses in terms of booking bands, so they're blocking other festivals, so you can't book, if your band plays this festival, you can't play these festivals. And, that's one way of, singling out festivals in a sort of a negative perspective. But that will obviously eventually, the festivals that can't afford to book those acts, there's competing with the fees that are continually rising and making it harder and more competitive. Those festivals, will decline and will, go away. I also think that a lot of bands, if you get to a certain level, will put on their own events. The Stone Roses have just reformed and they've sold 220,000 tickets in 14 minutes or something. They probably could have done 500,000 tickets. Coldplay are playing massive stadiums next year across the, they're staging their own events, and these won't just be there'll be 6 or 7 great bands on those bills. So I think the bigger bands are sort of thinking we can actually do this ourselves, and in a way, taking, rather than headlining a festival, they'll do their own mini festivals. And some of the acts I work with, not as big as Coldplay or Stone Roses, unfortunately, but fairly big acts, Florence and the Machine and the XX and people like that. They're talking about doing their own things, and so it's Mumford & Sons. They do a lot of their own things. So it's an exciting time where artists are, discovering that they can take the power and they can sell tickets and earn money from selling the tickets. Take a venue and run a venue with their own lineup that they curate and book. And they'll be employing promoters to do that. That happened really. It's a massive success in America. Mumford & Sons chartered a train and they paid a promoter, I think, 15%. They bankrolled the whole thing, and they earned a lot of money out of it, and it was their event. And I think that will happen more and more.
And maybe from Stephen or Martin, just to get a bit of a perspective on the future in India, how you see the live scene here developing.
Okay, just briefly in the UK, the 8 festivals I was involved with last year, they all had their best year ever. So I just think they all had their best year ever. So, but there is obviously an economic problems in Europe at the moment, and there's a problem with sponsorship. There will be. The biggest problem in India is both on the concept, is obviously the lack of venues, particularly at the lower levels. Obviously, massive
lack of venues.
Yeah, because we went round 2 years ago, and it was just like, there's so many places you can put on events in the UK, whether we talk about indoor buildings or parks or stately homes or castles. And you just don't have that in India. What you do have, of course, is, apart from obviously hard rock cafe, obviously there's a growing, live building venues, but also you have these great wedding venues. So actually, I see that. Well, that's effectively where NH7 has been held, and so that's obviously going to be the future. But obviously, it's really early days in India at the moment, which is why it's so exciting. Will it become a major touring market in the world? Absolutely, it will do. How long that will take is difficult to tell, but but it's
I
clearly
think you're going to have more and more artists from UK, Europe and America wanting to come to India and play. They're going to want to.
And more Indian artists across the genres coming to Europe.
Yeah, it's just a question of what kind of artists you guys want to have. You can
I think I was just going to add, from a booking agent's point of view, we book all around the world, and in the last 10 years, I guess, with the advent of penetration of media and broadband, we're booking territories now that we never used to work in. India's just one, but in China and Mexico and Venezuela and Argentina and countries like that. And that all to me looks like cross-fertilization of different tastes in music and different relationships between people that work in the industry here and the people that work in these developing countries around the world. So I can only see it improving.
It's so much more a worldwide business nowadays. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for being such an attentive audience. These guys will be around in the bar, I'm sure, after this. So if anybody's got any questions, then feel free to find them and talk to them.
And like I said, if you want to be on the guest list for NH7, please come and see me or Martin.
Sure. So thank you very much to the panelists and to you for being a great audience. Thank you.